All right, eventually, every parent figures out that they don't have as much control as they think they do. You know, the kids are going to turn out to be who they're going to be, and the best you can do is, you know, give them an example and guide them. Thank you. Guide them along the way, and then it's up to them. You know, and you're just left behind with all the guilt and worry. You know, and some of your kids give you a lot more worry than others, and we have a few who always stay on our more worried list, and one of them's our son Sammy, who has autism. You know, but to prevent ourselves from wallowing too much in our worry and our guilt, you know, we've always tried to celebrate the little victories. You know, and for Sammy though, the little victories are sometimes great because he's had to work really hard to do the things that most of us take for granted. And you know, since he was little, you know, Michelle, my wife, and I, we always make sure we take the time to remind each other of how well he's doing. And we'll say, honey, he's no longer smearing feces on the bathroom wall. Honey, he's no longer randomly taking off all his clothes. Honey, he put his socks on by himself. Honey, he doesn't scream like he used to. He doesn't hit himself like he used to. You know, and sometimes, you know, or I gave him a direction and he followed it. You know, and sometimes these little growth spurts would happen all at once, and it was wonderful. And one time when he was about 11 years old, he had a great year. He learned to tie his shoes, thanks to this incredible teacher, Mr. Jason, who worked with him, and he learned to tie his shoes. And later that year, you know, so now he could completely dress himself. And later that year, he learned to ride a bicycle, so he could ride a bike with his little brothers and sisters. You know, and that Christmas, he gave us the best Christmas present ever. We had, at the time, I think we had 6 children, and Michelle's brother, Billy, was in town visiting from the Bronx, and, you know, we had a big Polish Christmas Eve the night before at my sister's house, you know, just the immediate family, like 50 of us. Filling up on pierogi, and the next morning, you know, the kids were opening their presents, and you know, and the adults are drinking their coffee, watching them play their new games, and trying on their new clothes. And you know, we're having fun, and I forget to make breakfast, and it's getting late morning, and Sammy walks in, and he walks in with this clipboard with a legal pad on it, and on it's written in uppercase M and an uppercase D, and he says, "MD, MD, MD. I have an empty stomach." It was the first word he ever wrote. And I said, "Sammy, are you hungry?" He says, "Yes, Tata, yes, Tata." It's Polish for dad, Tata. I said, "Do you want me to make you breakfast?" "Yes, breakfast, Tata." And it was wonderful. And it's sort of like, it set off this cavalcade of events. For that year and the next year, every day he would just fill up page after page after page with all these uppercase letters, you know, and fill up entire legal pads, both sides, uppercase letters. And if you didn't know, it just looked like random letters, but if you look closely, because he didn't know you're supposed to leave spaces between words, you know, and use punctuation, and it was words, and it was sentences. And, you know, for years we'd been reading to him, thinking by this point that he'd never learn how to read. And for years, you know, my wife Michelle had gotten these stencils so he could write letters, you know, and they're all uppercase. And but if you look closely at that, you could read it. And it's, "Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like green eggs and ham. Do you like them here or there? I do not like them anywhere. Do you?" And he would write book after book after book after book, all these books we've been reading to him for all these years. And he's just hitting you with all these questions for hours. "Tata, what spells days?" That's D-A-Y-S, Sammy. "Tata, what spells says?" That's S-A-Y-S, Sammy. "Tata, what spells S-A-Y-S?" Says. "Tata, what spells D-A-Y-S? Days." "Tata, what spells?" An hour later. "Tata, what spells?" Finally, he pronounces. He says, "Tata, S-A-Y-S spells says. D-A-Y-S spells des." I said, "You're right, Sammy." D-A-Y-S spells des. But eventually he even figured out, you know, English spelling. And so, now he's 28 years old. And, when we go to the doctor or we have a meeting with the caseworker or whatever, they always give you that clipboard with all the questionnaires, and they always hand it to me. I said, he's the client, he's the patient, and they hand it to him, and he sits there in the chair, and he reads those questions so carefully, and he takes his time writing the answers in his uppercase letters. And every single time that I watch him doing this, I get choked up. And I remember that Christmas so long ago, and that this all began with an empty stomach.